Hello, everyone. Great to be here. My first Devcon talk ever. So super excited you joined me. I'll be talking about account abstraction. I have been building a DeFi consumer app in Brazil. It's called Picnic. We have been in the front lines trying to get web2 users to be on-chain and execute transactions on-chain. And the idea here is to share what we learned. So who are we? Like building consumer DeFi app, very focused in Brazil right now. We are seeing like really interesting feedback from users. So like when I go to conferences in Brazil and I meet people there, it's really nice to see that people really like the product, connect, and see the vision and see the benefit in using day to day. And there's two metrics I really like about that. There's something called Sean Ellis score. That is basically a form you send your users and you ask how disappointed you would be if you cannot use the product anymore. 60% of users say they would be very disappointed, which is a compelling thing that people really care about what we're doing. And they're seeing really good repeat usage. So once a user swaps, there's a 57% chance the user will swap next month. So this is really good. We'll put that a bit into context, but it's a real-world use case that we have been seeing repeat usage. And on the DeFi front with account abstraction, we are doing really good volumes. So we're doing close to half the swap volumes using ERC-437 across the main EVM chains. And why did I decide to apply this talk and come here to bring what we have learned? I think we talk a lot about mass adoption, and though everyone needs to be on-chain, but I think that this is very vague and abstract. There's, I mean, at least on the talks I have been participating, there's not a whole lot of depth on how you actually do that. Like from the point we are at right now, how to evolve this thing to really get people to mass adopt it and use it day to day. And as we are building something with like a few thousand users, and we have been shipping, iterating, and learning, I thought it would be valuable to come here and share what we have been seeing. For who this talk, I think it would be valuable is everyone that's interested in mass adoption and getting the nuance on how to get there. It will be mostly focused in strategy and product, is talking about what decisions we took, why we took them. So builders, people on ecosystems, VCs, I think everyone can see some value here. It should be pretty open, so if you have any questions at any point in time, just raise your hands. We can make Q&As and talk a bit and explore topics. I think they're I'll give a brief overview and we can deep dive on any specific topic we want to. I have 50 slides or so, but I don't think it will be enough to cover all the time. So yeah, we have time for Q&A. I think it will be very valuable. And to give you a sense on what we're covering, I'll start giving you an overview of the account abstraction landscape, kind of what's working, what's not. Then we'll talk a bit which kinds of users see the most value from this piece of technology and how should we approach the tool set we have, what's working best. Then we're going to Picnic, trying to give a sense of product decisions, what worked, what didn't, and small tweaks we made that make a difference. We're going through some of our user research, and then going after like, what are problems we see today? How can we solve that? How is the roadmap for the future? Like, I think we learned some cool stuff, but there's a lot of work ahead. So on the account abstraction landscape, if I would summarize account abstraction in one slide, you basically get a bunch of different problems like authentication, gas, like teaching users that you need a specific token for a specific chain to pay for gas. I think that there's no way this thing will be mass adopted just because of that one thing. Seed phrase is another thing that is like, it doesn't make sense to have to teach someone about a seed phrase to be able to onboard it, right? People should just be able to use it and the thing should work. Same as chains and like transactions, approved swap, anything that gets a bit more complex is just too much work if you're talking with the average person. So account abstraction, it solves most of these issues, or at least give you more options on things you can build. And the result of that, it should be that it should be usable by Web2 users. So account abstraction, I think that the fundamental promise is like you can break the bubble and you can make those products usable by a much wider audience. And it's growing. Like if you see the charts, most dashboards, you see things like this. So this is number of deployed smart accounts across the main EVM chains. Trend looks good. Not as exponential, but still healthy. And it's kind of obvious it should grow. Like you're making it easier to use. So like if something is easier, people just use it more, right? But if you do some more detailed analysis and you look at individual projects, the trend is not usually that just make it easy and things will go. This kind of pattern that you see like spikes and things dying down, this is very, very common across this space. Not sure who has seen that, but this is retention rates for the whole account abstraction space. So like this is like 2% retention for the first week. The best one we have here in all ones is like 12%, which is reasonable, but like most are 4 or 3. It's really, really low retention. So for every 25 users you get, only one returns next week to do something. So there is this problem with repeat usage. And the main thing here is like, why this thing happening, right? Like why people are not coming back to do transactions next week, why the value is not being sustained. And just to get a sense, who here is using account abstraction wallets on like a monthly basis? Okay, so 5 people. And who here is using wallets on a monthly basis? Yeah. And this is kind of my point. I think I don't use, I use Picnic, but it's a different use case. I don't even think about Picnic as a wallet. But account abstraction wallets are not a very good solution for Web3 native users. I think they are worse than UA wallets for Web3 natives. The first one is you pay more gas. There's gas overhead to be able to use account abstraction wallets. Second thing is limited use cases. So if you want to deploy in a new chain, if the wallet provider you're using it doesn't support that chain, like if you want to do that manually, maybe you can't, maybe you can, but you need to be a developer. So it's this weird thing that you can't do whatever you used to do. You don't have that much freedom. There's dApps that won't work with that. If you deploy it on ZK Sync, you have a different address. So there's all those weird quirks that, yeah, it is worse in terms of use cases. And you also need to learn it. So like I spend a lot of time around smart contract wallets. I know how it works. I trust it. But if you talk even with the typical Web3 native user, there's a learning curve. Here is probably the most sophisticated piece of that cohort, so people get it, how it works. But like a lot of people is, why does it have a different address? Where's the seed phrase of the smart contract wallet? And all those questions that come up that you need to educate, and that is a learning curve. And in the end, like you're paying more gas, you have less stuff to do, but you already learned how to operate a UA wallet. So why you're going through all that hassle? Like you don't really need a smart contract wallet. You can do it without. So that's the thing that's like trying to put account abstraction as is in the hands of Web3 natives is not the path. I think 7702 changes a lot of that, but for now it hasn't worked. I don't know of any examples, and the examples I know that are working well are in a different direction. And the question is, okay, so Web3 natives not really working. So for who this technology adds value? And the thing we have been seeing is like people that cannot do it otherwise. So if you have someone that wants to do something on-chain, be it because you want a product that's non-custodial or want to buy a token that's not available anywhere, this person doesn't really know how to use an EOA, then you can deliver a lot of value, because it's not a matter of like being easier than the alternative. It's being a matter of like, can I do it or can I not do it? And the person like doesn't have the option of the EOA. And getting specific use cases, I think it's an important one as well. Like Polymarket, I would put in that bucket, WorldCoin in that bucket. That's people that is like more, if you abstract the UX and you make a very simple flow very easy, that seems to work much better than trying to do everything. And the thing that we're seeing, like this is the kind of chart I showed, like you get spikes, you get Web3 users, you get a lot of hype, but it's very hard to sustain it. The one on the right is Picnic. That's weekly transactions for the past few months. You don't see necessarily the big spikes, but retention is really good. So people come, they use the product, they like it, and they keep using it. And the idea here now is like to give you a sense on what are the product decisions that we made and why the thing is working. But now, like, any questions so far? How is that going? Just okay. I'll keep pushing, and then we can do Q&A later, or because I already went to like 20 slides, and yeah, let's see how that goes. So the things, like, the idea here is go to the things I think we did right, and what were the key learnings we had in each of the steps. So first thing, I think one of the ways I describe Picnic is that it's a centralized exchange-like experience or a fintech-like experience, but everything running on-chain. And I think focusing on that very core use case, it makes the product much easier to build. It makes the product much easier to understand for users. There's a simple use case. You come to buy and sell tokens, basically. And it makes it easier to use. It's just a single flow. And one thing I think we spent a lot of time is just like, okay, account abstraction is really nice. I think it's a fundamental building block if we want to deliver like DeFi for a wider audience for Web2 users. But what else beyond that do we need to build? So what other building blocks are key and critical? And I'll give you an overview of the whole product. This we see here is basically like the main pieces of the flow. I'll get a bit more in detail. But basically, you can sign in with Google, you can sign in by mail. If you want to connect with an external wallet, you can as well. And once you sign in, one of the critical things we spent a lot of time thinking about is how to integrate on-chain with off-chain. So this thing here, this is IBAN. IBAN is basically a European bank account. So that second line is a bank account number. If you transfer money to that IBAN, this is euros. This is live in Europe. We're mainly in Brazil, but we're also present in Europe, and I think this is a better example because it's on-chain bank account. That's the abstraction I'm making. If I transfer euros to that IBAN, Euro stablecoins are minted in the wallet as soon as the money arrives. And if you transfer 100 euros, you receive like 100 euros in your wallet and you can spend from there. And this is like the swap flow. So like, let's say I transfer 25 euros to that IBAN. Now I have 25 euros in my wallet. I can buy ARB with that. So that's kind of the flow, is very similar to what you would get in a fintech, very similar to what you get in a centralized exchange. But that's all happening on-chain with pretty abstracted UX. And I'll go by every one of the components of that flow. So it's basically authentication, on and off ramp, gas, chains, transactions, and a few other tricks. On the authentication part, you basically have Google email and external wallet. A very peculiar thing we learned, like we have been iterating with this sort of product for almost 2 years. We didn't start with connect with the external wallet. That's something we added much later. And it's really interesting that, at least on our perception, that just giving the ability for the user to connect with an external wallet, connect with MetaMask or anything else, most users are not using that. That is fairly complicated and not really the point of what we're doing. But it helped increase trust a lot. Maybe not necessarily with the end user, but for example, content creators and YouTubers and people that really helped us grow, they trusted us a lot more when we added the option to connect with MetaMask. Because now it's much easier to understand that things are actually happening on-chain, and this is actually non-custodial. So that was a small detail in the user flow that makes a lot of difference in how you market it and how you access users and how you can distribute it. Some other thing that I think it's mentioned.
Was adding the external wallet integration part of your effort to onboard Web3 natives? Because you mentioned somewhere in the beginning of your talk that the user he's not a Web3 native when it comes to A. It's somebody who is outside, right? So what made you feel this was important?
People ask for it, like a few users asked for the external wallet option. So that's why we added it. That's like people are asking quite a few, let's implement that. But it's like 15% of our users use external wallets right now. So it is significant. But in my perception, the biggest gain we got from the external wallet was the trust. That people see you can connect with an external wallet, so they understand quicker it is non-custodial. Yeah, but.
Did you see that two users then switch to this external wallet thing? Existing cohort of users who?
If we're seeing Web2 users migrate to external wallets after they start using with email, we have not been monitoring that. I don't think it's happening that much. Still, like, people use email login still a lot. So we're much more in the path to improving email login and getting a better security. Could you get a microphone there? Can I get some help with the mics, Titus? But yeah, the external wallet, I think, is mostly good for trust.
So I'm curious, did you build your own custom auth or did you use something off the shelf?
We're using Magic Link.
Magic Link.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's just for the email, right? Or is it also Google Authentication?
We have
for both. Okay. Gotcha. And the external wallet is a separate thing.
Yeah, it's separate. The external wallet, it's directly, I think it's connected with WAGMI, and that's pretty much it.
Wallet, yeah. Thanks. All right, thank you.
Okay.
A permanent mic. Yeah, and one interesting learning we had on this auth piece is that getting something that is more centralized but is more reliable is much better than more decentralized and less reliable. Like if you're having trouble with like 0.3% of login cases, which we had with a different provider, that's a really bad thing. Like this thing cannot break, never. It's like, it's very important to be super, super robust. So now, which I think is probably one of the most interesting pieces, is the integration with Fiat, the off-chain, on-chain integration. We were doing DeFi native stuff before, and we worked with a French protocol with Jarvis. They did a lot of not exotic stablecoin, so they did Brazilian real stablecoin, Japanese yen stablecoin, and spending time there with the founder made me realize that stablecoins, like local stablecoins, are the best possible solution for on and off ramp. That's for mainly two reasons. First is unit of account, so like people in Europe are already used to thinking in euros, so all your balances are in euros. Like Brazil is the same, everything is in reais, and in many, many countries it's like that. So if you're funding an account, you're already thinking your currency, better to keep that way, right? It's just easier, less cognitive overload, things just work. And one really cool thing that I don't see a lot of people talking about, stablecoins make money just sitting on the money. So they get the treasury yield, like in Brazil, they get paid 10% a year just to hold reais. In Europe, it's like 3 or 4% a year, something on that range. So they have a revenue stream just by holding your euros and give you stablecoins. So like they can incentivize on off-ramps, so they can subsidize on and off-ramps, which is what we have been seeing. Both in Europe and Brazil, we have free and very fast and very good on and off-ramps, and that seems sustainable. Like we're not subsidizing it. That's the business model for the stablecoins. So it is both from the UX perspective as well as from the economics perspective, the long-term way to onboard users. And it's free and instant. It's a really, really good UX. Like you can go from money in your bank account in Brazil to money in your bank account in Europe through Picnic in 5 minutes. And you can do the inverse as well. If you have a fast bank in Europe, that's usually the bottleneck. One cool thing we did, this was more recent, but across the app, we're not calling stablecoins by their name. So the Euro stablecoin we use is EURI from Ethereum, but we just call it Euros. For Reais is BRLA, we just called it Reais. We had quite a bit of feedback, especially on the less sophisticated side of users. It's like, okay, I deposit Reais and I got this weird thing called BRLA. What is that? So those small details, they matter a lot, especially when you go to less sophisticated users. So I think spending time there and improving small details matter a lot. One other thing that I think is worth mentioning is KYC and UX to be able to on-ramp. We had a different on-ramp provider before the ones we have right now, and it was a quite bad KYC process. It was confusing, not very well polished. I think it's worth spending a lot of time in getting KYC UX really good. Conversions is day and night. I think that one of the things that made us able to grow and see some repeat usage was getting the flows easy enough for people to onboard and start using and then be able to keep using. Gas abstraction, this is something I think very cool that we did. Like you can pay gas in whatever token the user has in its wallet. So here is dollars, it's USDT. But like even if you have some random meme coin that is listed on Picnic, and our process for listing is basically if it's in CoinGecko, it's in Picnic, we just scrape that and list the tokens. We accept it. So if you have basically among like 5,000 tokens, you can use that to pay for gas. So it is just fees. You don't really need to teach the user that, oh, you need to get a separate token to pay for this transaction. The thing just works. Like you have Pepe or whatever, you pay gas and Pepe, and it's all good. Any questions here?
So are you abstracting exchange for them then?
Yeah, we actually hold the Pepe and sell it later. So, and we settle with the paymaster.
Yeah, and connect to the previous slide as well. So like, did you find that you needed any kind of regulatory approval to roll out a product like this? Because it's like quite a lot of money handling in like at like 20,000 foot overview. I'm just curious how the regulators saw it.
Yeah, we see ourselves as a tech provider mostly. All the things we do, you could do without us, for the most part. Yeah, and so it's still like not very clear what we need and what we don't. At some point, I think it will probably get regulated. Now, I think there's a lot of gray zone.
It's still 100% non-custodial. So I think there's still an opportunity for us, like being non-custodial and not being regulated. If we were to hold users' money, perhaps we should.
Yeah, the regulation applies to the stable holder, to the stablecoin issuer, not to the...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and is that a barrier to adopt USDC, for example? Is that a barrier to adopt USDC as well? Or, because I saw you on Euro and Real, but
we could adopt the USDC, but the thing is that Circle does not provide a dedicated ramping service like Monerium for end users. They have, as far as I know, they only have like ramping for institutions. So if you want to do like a retail solution, we would need to find another provider that could do the KYC.
Yeah, like a MoonPay or something like that on ramp.
Yeah,
yeah,
and they would have a fee on it. It would not be probably one-to-one.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So the relationship with the stablecoin is directly with the user. So the user transfer money to the stablecoin provider, and the stablecoin provider mints directly in the user wallet. It's not like, yeah.
IBAN that we see over there, who's it from? Like you generate one for each user?
The IBAN we see here, it's one for each wallet. And that relationship is directly from the user with the stablecoin provider. The stablecoin provider has an e-money license in Europe, and then they provide the IBAN to the user. Yeah. So, it gets created as soon as the KYC is approved. Sometimes it's like within a minute to 3. Sometimes it takes a bit more.
I was curious to know if the KYC was made with the SumSub or do you use any other third-party provider?
KYC is always handled by the partners. So the Brazilian Real stablecoin has its KYC flow. The Euro stablecoin has its KYC flow. And one of the problems we're getting is like how to make those people talk together because it's quite bad UX to make your user KYC for every product, and especially with RWAs and things like that. That can be really painful. So yeah, those solutions of like reusing KYC, sharing KYC, that's really valuable.
Just want to add one thing there, because there are so many things that we need to do to improve as a company, as Ethereum and crypto as a whole. And this KYC sharing scheme is one of them. Like, how are we going to manage identity? And if we think like this is just one use case of stablecoin on-off ramping, but then you can plug in, for example, debit cards. And if the debit card provider is different from the on-ramping solution, will you need to do another KYC for the debit card? So it doesn't make sense. So we need to find a solution where like the KYC is shared, but it's still decentralized and everything. It's a big problem.
Yeah, just a UX thing that we found has been really irritating is for stablecoins, because they don't exactly peg. Do the users get confused as to why why they even see that second amount, and like what that means, and how do you explain that to them?
It is indeed a problem. We solved it somehow by the stable coins that have direct on and off ramping. We just pegged it to the value because they are pegged in fact, because if you have 100 EURs and you want to withdraw 100 EURs, you're going to get 100 euros. So they are essentially pegged. They might not value the same in dollar terms when you swap them into a DEX, for example, but that's another issue. That's another problem that you mix with slippage, we've mixed with liquidity, but we just pegged it into the UI and it works.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Nice. Happy to see some questions. Thank you.
So it's a two-part question. The first part being that, can you go, yeah, okay. No, that slide, yeah. So now that you see here, it's dollar in USDT on the OP network. And the resulting currency is OP, on the OP network. Now, if I want to change and take it on a different network, so does it act like a swap or a bridge or both? That's...
You do both. Look there, yeah, it's the same.
Okay. So, so that's one part of the question. And the second part of the question is that can I switch from one currency like the euro to maybe a dollar or to maybe an Indian rupee or whatever is available at that moment? Can I switch between two fiats? Can I transfer money between two fiats, and how do you keep up with the exchange rate of the day? That is my question.
Yes. So the best use case we have for that, like we have ramps both in Brazil and in Europe. And you can, like, on ramp reais, you get BRLA, which is a Brazilian real stablecoin, and you can swap on-chain BRLA for EUR. The way that happens, that's USDC BRLA liquidity pool on Uniswap v3. There is a liquidity pool between, I think, USDC and EUR, also on Uni v3 or another DEX. Someone routes make all the batch, and you go from reais to euros, and then you off ramp. The whole thing takes 5 minutes-ish, 3 minutes-ish, somewhere around that range. It depends a bit on how long banks process. And a really cool thing is it's really fast, cheap, and the UX is really like, it is faster than Wise, it's cheaper than Wise, and yeah.
We received some, it's more of a bet perhaps. For the new user, we implemented a separated swap. This is like the complex swap that João is showing perhaps. We have a dedicated swap just for fiat that we're trying to experiment, but exactly like users that on-ramp with Brazilian reais that want to off-ramp with euros and vice versa, they could use this specialized swap just for fiat.
So this can be like a money exchange use case also?
Yes, it could.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. And here we also experimented, like the last thing I was talking about, just to go back, is you can pay gas with whatever token you have. And one thing that usually helps quite a bit is free transactions. So like we got gas sponsorship on Polygon and Base. It helps. Users are happy not to pay. But surprisingly, people like, we didn't see that much difference in volume for free gas on the cheap chains. So this UX is so good that like people use it, and it is not a blocker as you would expect maybe in a different setting, just because you don't need to educate about anything. On the chain, a lot of people are chain abstraction might be off what the current meta on that is, but what I'm calling chain abstraction is basically this list of assets. It's mixed, like all EVM chains we support, they are mixed here. You cannot know beforehand which chain are you settling it. Like our mental model there is like our typical user isn't knowledgeable enough and not sophisticated enough to really care and to be able to make an informated decision on where to settle that trade, how to do it. So it's just abstract, and it's like, what do you want to buy? You click and you buy, and the thing works. You can still see the chain here. So like above, you can see Polygon. Below, you can see Arbitrum. But the key thing here is like, how do you avoid the user to think which chain? I think is a really bad UX pattern to so like, which chain do you want? And there will be users that will be like, what is a chain? I don't know what that is. What do I do here? And just making the thing work with sensible defaults that you can execute and give the user the token the user wants. I think that's a good way to think about this problem. It's a good pattern. And one important thing we did here is to avoid high gas costs. We have a bunch of warnings if you're using Ethereum mainnet on Picnic, just because of the gas cost. It's fairly expensive, especially for Brazil, which is not, it's a developing country, so like income is not that high, and it is really expensive to trade there. And even with the warnings, people trade there and get really upset when they realize they paid a lot in fees. So it's actually quite hard to trade on Ethereum mainnet. On Picnic, you need really to want to do it. You need to select manually the chain. It is not the main flow we use. Transaction batching, the approve and swap thing, this, like we approve every swap for the exact amount the swap is taking place, but it doesn't feel anything. It's just approve and swap. You just click the button and everything happens behind the scenes. And one interesting episode we saw earlier this year, Wi-Fi was hacked. We use Wi-Fi a lot, but as we never did like infinite approvals or approvals that were larger than the swap, and it's always atomic, so there were no allowances made. No user funds were compromised, although like one of the main partners we use was hacked pretty badly. And this is a like the way I think about this is sometimes you solve for problems that we're not really thinking about. I don't think like doing approve every transaction was a deliberate decision, but we're not thinking about that when we chose to build an account abstraction. That decision was mostly because of UX, but once you get more flexibility to build what you want, you also get some interesting benefits. For example, the safety thing. Other things we did on the product that I think could be worthwhile. We have redundancies for everything. So I mentioned we use Li-Fi for swaps, but we also use XY, we use Squid Router, we use 0x, we use the bridge. And it's really nice to be able to, like, if something breaks, you get a second layer. Pedro, who's helping me answer the questions, he used to work in aviation. So it's a very appreciated background to think what happens if something fails. So and that's super key for what we're doing. Stablecoin liquidity was something that we had to think quite a bit about. Not our main focus, but at first, like we basically bootstrapped the BRLA USDC pool on Polygon, and we spent a lot of time like, how do we ensure this thing gets pegged, and how do we get liquidity people, and the way we solved that really was with growth. So the stablecoin thing started working well as soon as we got growth, and there was fees, and now we have some Telegram groups that people are the pool, and some nice organic things, some community that's forming around that, because people can make money with that now, so incentives still work. We overbid for gas as a default, like explaining to users that, oh, now the network got more expensive, that you need to send another transaction. I think that's a very bad pattern. So just making things work and not overloading the user with decisions and information that the user will probably not understand. I think it's valuable. One thing that happened with a few more Web3 native users is people would get a smart account address, and they would send money to that. But it could be in a chain that were not deployed. So for example, when this product went live, it was Polygon only. We launched first there because of the stablecoins. And people would send USDC to Arbitrum, but we're not deployed there. And it was hell to get the funds back. Basically, they had to wait until we deployed on Arbitrum. So for this kind of thing, getting people to choose the chain and then check if that asset will be shown in the UI, some friction there helped a lot with customer support. Yeah, one cool thing, like once we started getting a bit more traction and getting more users, customer support has been very, very insightful to get the common mistakes, like people sending money to contract address of the token and all those repeat mistakes. You need to build a lot of the UI and the product to avoid that thing. And it has become that we have been able to pretty consistently get tickets down. And from all those things, those small details and the tweaks, I think we got to a place that it's a product that is competing, at least in some very specific use cases, against centralized exchanges. There are people moving money out of Binance and putting into Picnic. That's a real thing. And those are not sophisticated users for the most part. Those are not people that would be here or would be technical and super deep on the space. It's just users that they want to buy crypto. And one thing I think it would be valuable here is to get a sense on what kinds of users we are seeing using Picnic and what they are doing and how they're interacting and thinking about our product. So this is volumes that we do. 98.6% of the volumes we see in the platform now is swaps. 1.4% is yield. Interesting thing is we started with yield. That was the first iteration, or first hypothesis that people want yield in dollars. Like if we give them 10% a year on dollar yield, it will explode. Not really. People ask a lot of questions if you offer them 10% a year or even more. At some point we had 20%. Like, what is smart contract risk? Like, how do I think about this? And it's a very hard quest to actually deliver this to non-sophisticated users. At some point in time, we added swaps, and that's where we started seeing traction. We doubled down on that, and that's what's working now. And to give you a sense on what people are swapping to, the most swapped token is the Brazilian Real stablecoin. That's BRLA. It's the most swapped because if people want to sell and off-ramp, they will all go through BRLA. So that's like a one-way path. Second is USDT. So that's a lot of the usage, USDT, USDC. You have USDT in second, USDC in fourth, and there's also USDC-E that's on Polygon. So among the top 10, you have 3 USD stablecoins, so big use case. And then Rep Bitcoin, Rep Solana, ETH, Pol, Pando, but it's very similar to the distribution profile you see at a Brazilian centralized exchange. People buy a lot of USDC, but they buy a lot of majors and all the other tokens. So it's similar users, I think. That's the way you have been interpreting. We run some surveys. We do that every couple months to get a pulse on how people are feeling about the product, what's working well, what's not. We did one a few weeks ago. This is quite recent. Had 100 people answering. 61% of the people that answered, they said they would be very disappointed if we stop building the product. So and this has been a trend. So I think we have been able to really get to users that value the product and really use it frequently. And when we ask them, like, name the top 3 things you like, by far the most liked thing is ease of use. And I think this can be break down into many different things. It's like, it's the easiest way to on-ramp, the easiest way to off-ramp if you're a slightly more sophisticated user. But it goes to, like, it's the easiest way to buy tokens in a no-custodial way, or it's the easiest way to buy BRAT on Base, or anything that is a bit less supported by traditional centralized exchanges. Low fees. So one of the things we are really bullish on DeFi, and actually the reason why I decided to pivot my career to DeFi is that DeFi can be very efficient. We were able to build this product with 5 people. Now we have 7, but this is a product that had like a few thousand tokens, a few chains. It's a quite complex product, but because we are building on-chain, like, we just leverage the infrastructure, and it's an order or 2 orders of magnitude easier to build than something that would be centralized. And one of the direct consequences of that is you can charge cheaper fees for your users. You're not spending that much to maintain it.
That's so cool. That's like that 5 people built this from scratch. Essentially, how long did it take you?
It takes a lot more time, I think, pivoting and find what to build.
Yeah, but like when you decided on this last version, like how long did it take you to get to today?
We actually decided to do this on Devcon Bogota,
which was what, 2 years ago? Huh?
2 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
After Bogota, we launched it, I think, 6 months afterwards, like perhaps in March or April of the next year. So it's been perhaps a year and a half.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So another question, more like a use case question than anything else. So let's say I want to buy property in Romania, which can accept euros in bank accounts. Would I be able to send, for example, USDC to your wallet, then convert it to Euro E, and then off-ramp it in Romania?
Yes, you would.
Oh yeah, that is awesome, man. Like, I was hoping that would be the answer, but like, yeah. And the KYC requirements are decided by the local partner, right? Yes. Okay, cool, awesome. Thanks, guys. This is great.
Yeah. When Monerium and BRLA are issuing the currency, there's a gas cost, right? How does it work? Like, do they subsidize the gas cost when they're issuing? And also, do they charge anything? Like, let's say I deposit 100 reais. Do I get 100 reais? Like, how does it work?
If you deposit 100 reais, you get 100 stablecoins, and you off-ramp that, you have 100 reais. It's like for free. You won't pay.
And they pay for the gas fee themselves?
They pay for the gas fees, and they pay for the bank transfer fees as well.
On Monerium as well?
Monerium as well. Okay. And the way that works and why that's sustainable is that they make money on the yield.
On the yield, yeah.
So they can subsidize the gas fees and the bank costs as well.
I saw that you mentioned Bitcoin, but it's wrapped Bitcoin, right? Because you don't support Bitcoin native.
Yes, it's wrapped Bitcoin. We are hopeful in a few months we'll be able to allow withdrawals to Bitcoin wallets. So there's some cool intent stuff happening that should allow, and maybe some Bitcoin L2s, EVMs. That's one of the key things that users ask for. It's super on the roadmap. Any other questions, comments? Okay, and thank you for the questions. It's nice. Oh, okay, sorry.
That's a very quick question. How did you get to the numbers? The percentages, how did you find out?
How did we get to the percentages? That is a survey, like a Google Forms we sent to users, and they answered, and that was their answers, and then we do some categorization work. Yeah. Yeah. So low fees. Cost is something that we are keen to deliver and to be very competitive on as well. Speed, that was actually quite surprising for us. I think that it takes longer than centralized exchanges. For a few use cases, you need to wait for transactions to confirm, but still, depending on what you're comparing to, the experience is very smooth, right? The on-ramp is super fast and thing works well. Non-custodial is in there, but it's relevant. I think it's quite related to ease of use. If you talk with people and have conversations, it is a strong component on why they differentiate us from other services. And the main way we have been distributing is focusing on being non-custodial. I think that's the clearest differentiating factor. It's like if Picnic ceases to exist, users can still retrieve funds. There's a path for them to recover everything, even without us. And the on and off ramp thing, it's also quite cited. One thing we're enjoying doing is seeing the evolution of those answers across time. So there's 3 bars here. There's a light gray on top. I'm not sure on how clear that is. But ease of use, for example, it was below 40% in May. Now we're over 70%. So that's the key thing we have been hammering on, is how to make this thing easier to use. And users are seeing that, and then based on their feedback, we have been iterating, adjusting the product to get there. So it's nice to see that's becoming easier to use. Low fees is also improving. I think most of that was probably due to liquidity. We improved the stablecoin liquidity, and it got cheaper to use. Speed is quite a new thing and interesting. I don't understand that deeply. Non-custodial, I think that's an education piece, and people are starting to appreciate that. But that's the general sense on how this is evolving. And when we ask users to what they would like to see on Picnic now, there's native Bitcoin is the second thing that people ask more often. Now that we have delivered the swap use case, I think quite well, people are asking for yield quite a bit. So it is the most asked for feature, how to get yield products. And there is a bunch of different yield things in there. And also credit card, which was an interesting thing we found out. And cool thing, if we see this over time, the main thing that used to be asked was please add more networks and more tokens. So the more chains and more cryptos. It used to be the gray bar at, I don't know, 16% of users were asking that. We made it multi-chain. We added 8 different chains. And then it dropped to the very smallish orange bar. So it's cool to see that the features actually drive user perception and drive user behavior.
Do you have any insight into the type of user that's replying to these questions? So you said you have 50% using external wallets, 50% using the embedded wallets within the app. Do you know where these lines in terms of the replies to both questionnaires?
Have you run that?
No, we don't know it specifically, but in general, we have a very low usage rate of external wallets, 15%. 15, yeah. So pretty much the majority is email or Google. So we assume pretty much those are the same thing, the same people.
I also see in this chart that demand for a mobile app, is that a mobile app? That's gone down. And usually we see mobile apps as the fundamental barrier. We talk about it a lot, why normal users, they're not adopting cryptos because it's hard for them to get there. And also in major developing markets, especially India, where I come from, everybody is on mobile. And so is much of Southeast Asia, maybe Latin America. In the markets that you seem to operate, why do you see this to be the case?
Yeah, our theory here on why people are asking less for a mobile app is because the UX got a lot better. So I think in a sense that they were asking for a mobile app because the UX was not that good. So they're, yes, it's
50-50, yeah? Like 50% desktop, 50% mobile. Generally in a protocol, if I'm not mistaken, like the rule of thumb is a third mobile, 2/3 desktop. So since we are doing like a consumer app, we have more mobile than desktop generally.
And it has been increasing, right? It used to be like 70-30 or something like that. I think the path forward is mobile first, and getting a mobile app is very important either way, for other reasons as well. Anything you would like to comment here? Or? And just to make the point of the single chain, multi-chain thing, this is basically when we launched the Picnic on more chains, and you can see like we get an incremental business line. So there's a new volume that maybe wouldn't happen otherwise if we didn't support more chains. And yeah, the way we are thinking about this is like every time we solve one of these, people will use it more. So if we add native Bitcoin, the Bitcoiners that don't want to use Picnic because they cannot withdraw to a Bitcoin wallet, maybe they'll start using it either because it's fast, either because it's cheap, or either because it's non-custodial, it's better than centralized exchanges. I think there's a few different reasons why people connect to this product. And okay, any questions? Any other questions? Okay.
I live in Argentina, and it's very common to use TROM, USDT. Have you thought about tackling that? I didn't see it in the list, and I think it could be an opportunity, right?
Yes. TROM in Brazil, which is our major market, I think is relevant, but I think as far as I know,
the currency issues, it's quite expensive. So in Argentina, it's much more expensive, like the gas fees and so on, so it makes more sense to use Tron. So, but in Brazil, it's not that much big of a deal because even though we're a developing country, we don't have the same kind of issues as Argentina, so Tron is not as big in there. But it is big, you know, like Rossello, like it is still quite expressive as well, but we don't need to rely on it that much because we don't need really, really, really cheap fees.
And
we do receive requests about ROM, but it has not gotten to like a high priority in our discussions yet. Perhaps it will be, but right now we haven't. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and this is the last session, and the idea here is basically to talk about. It is growing. I think it's healthy. But the thing we really, really need to see is the charts, something like this, right? Like growing 7% week over week, and seeing the real mass adoption happen, right? Like get this to a meaningful group of people. Like what we have now, I think it's a good first step, but there is a lot of work to be done. And like the way I see this vertical, this consumer DeFi thing, the account abstraction for that specific use case of doing similar things of what you do in a centralized exchange, is for it to become the main way to handle crypto. Like I don't see any fundamental reasons why centralized exchanges should exist. I think DeFi has a lot of issues. a lot of very hard engineering problems to be solved. But in the end of the day, like for the end user, if you get like a very easy way to have non-custodial wallets that's very cheap and you have access to pretty much any product you want, what is the compelling case for using a centralized exchange? I think we haven't got to that point now, and there's a lot of work to do to get there. But once we get there, we will see that chart. So that chart, I think, is like, if we solve the UX issues, the engineering issues, and deliver a really, really compelling product, I think we'll see like tremendous adoption and tremendous growth. And on the challenges side, at least the things we see that needs to be improved, security is the one that's top of mind for me. Now, the way that people are interacting with Picnic and quite a few similar applications is still through email. And like in the money business, like in the banking business, exchange business, trust is a very, very, very fundamental component. Like everything's based on trust. People will only use your product, only use your service if they trust you. And like not having a single point of failure, I think it is quite bad. So if the email gets compromised and you get compromised funds, I don't think that will scale. I don't think that will get to mass adoption because people will realize it is not the best safety you could get. So if you use a bank, you get something that's much better than that. So we have been spending some time on like how to improve this and how to like make redundancies, recoveries, like inheritance. I think there's all that surrounding problems that needs to be solved, that you can actually deliver something that has a lot of the benefits of non-custodial systems and distributed systems to the end user in a way that the person doesn't need to spend a lot of time and to take a lot of responsibility of maintaining the security for their own assets. Education, I think it's a big topic still. So people want to export the private keys of smart contract wallets. There's all those barriers of trust and getting people to be comfortable with something that's different. And like getting people off exchanges, I think that's all a process. We have been really focusing producing content. That's the main distribution channel we have found, is like find people that understand what we do and can explain what we do in terms their audiences understand. And I think that's a fundamental pillar going forward, is like how do we get this message across and we get people to care about what we're building. Polishment this is other improvements, but I think mobile app, as we said, is a strong component. You can get a few safety tweaks. You can get push notifications. It's a better UX generally, and I think it matters. Like having great UI, having great animations, I think that's great. Being fast, and yeah, things just work. You don't have any cognitive overload. Costs is also one. Like liquidity is not that good still with the local stablecoins. You can do like $1,000 trades to 5. If you go 10, 20, 50, not there yet. So a lot of work to be done on that side as well. And there is one way to think about it. We need to close gaps with centralized exchanges. So we need to allow users to withdraw Bitcoin. Credit card is something else, as we saw. But like getting users to a point that there is no reason to use a centralized exchange and everything works as well or better using decentralized rails is the path to go forward here. And at some point, it will be better than Saxes. It will be safer. it will be cheaper, and you will be able to do more things than you would to be able to do in a centralized exchange. And then I think the crypto natives, maybe much earlier with 7702, but my mindset is like, we push this thing, we make it work for Web2 natives. And as the thing improves, like 7702 and other cool things that are coming around, it will get good enough that we go back to one of the first slides, that this technology is not really geared towards Web3 natives. I think it will be good enough that even people that could do otherwise will say like, okay, I would rather use the multi-sig with recovery and all those cool features that I don't need to worry about maintaining my seed phrase or getting my own security set up. And this thing is already in all the main chains I use and has all the key protocols I use, and it works fine. But I think it's, step by step and building for the Web2 users. Those are the early adopters for this kind of technology. And that was it. Happy to take more questions. And
picking up on the trust slide, we don't need to go there, but how are you folks monetizing on the product? Like, how can you be sure that Picnic will be there tomorrow?
So on the monetization aspect, it's still quite similar to a centralized exchange. We take a fee on swaps. It ranges from 0.1% to 0.25%. 0.1 single chain, 0.25 cross chain. When we launch more vertical, so if you launch credit card, we'll get some revenue there. If launch yield, we get some revenue there. So the way we have been thinking about monetization is like be very aggressive with costs, because I think that's one of the strategic advantages of building on-chain. But really building the product so you have many different revenue streams that on the whole you can make money and make this a booming business. Any more questions? Okay, I think we're done. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to contact me, I'll be happy to share a bit more. And yeah, thank you for staying for 1 hour and a bit.
Vale nada o dinheiro, né? Senão você vai gastar, sei lá, umas coisas da doação de R$100, gasta 5.